Okay. Now we're going.
Okay,
So the Public Works meeting has a quorum. We have Bob Lyons, Carrie Schaffner, Dan Ramsey, Carl Stump, and Kendra Wokus.
Focus. Rhymes with
Focus.
focus.
I will get that eventually.
Yeah.
all right, well, I'll call the meeting to order of the Public Works Committee then. And I want to begin by saying thank you to Carrie for filling in last week as chair when I couldn't answer the bell. I appreciate it. It looks like you survived it nicely.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Bob.
And I wanted to say hi to Kendra. I've not met you before. I'm Bob Lyons. I'm the chair of the committee. I've been on the Public Works Committee for 12 years. And I've been the chair for about, the last 2 or 3, I guess. And I'm also one of your District 2 constituents. And your last name is Wakos or Wokus?
Focus.
Wokus.
Yeah, like
Mine
hocus
is
pocus or focus.
Hocus pocus, Wokus. All right. Well, nice to meet you. Welcome to the committee. I look forward to working with you here.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, our first item of business is minutes of May 9th.
Move to approve the minutes. Ramsey.
A motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
This is Carrie. I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion with respect to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it and the minutes are approved. Sean, I would appreciate it if you would list me as an abstention on the minutes since I was not at the meeting.
All right.
All right, election of a vice chair of the committee. Don Canor is currently the vice chair, and Don has indicated he would like to serve in that capacity again, I believe. So with that in mind, I will nominate Don Canor as vice chair of the Public Works Committee. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Third and final call. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I will declare nominations closed, and by virtue of the fact that Don is the only nominee, I will declare him duly elected as the vice chair of the Public Works Committee after a grueling election battle.
Oh, he didn't even show.
Reputation precedes. All right, now we have to appoint a member of the Conservancy Lands Commission. As I understand the ordinance, Sean, it says that the chair of the Public Works Committee or a member of that committee appointed by the chair would serve. I've served in that capacity for the past couple of years, and I would like to do that again to finish out this term on the Public Works Committee. So I don't know if we need to do anything else. Is that?
Oh, that is your prerogative, the way
That
the
does it?
ordinance is
Okay.
written.
Well, and I've exercised that prerogative, and we'll move on to the Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Transit Committee. Are there any nominations for the Public Works Committee representative to that committee?
And I'll throw in here, there has to be somebody because Susan West had been our representative.
I would be interested. I don't know. I don't need to nominate myself. If others are interested, that's fine too.
If you're interested, Carrie, I will nominate Carrie Schaffner.
And I'll pass along that Gayatri said she's happy where she is, but she's willing to serve. So take that for what it's worth.
All right, are there any other nominations to Bike Ped and Transit Committee? Any other nominations? Third and final call. Any other nominations to that committee? Hearing none, I will declare nominations closed, and Carrie Schaffner is duly elected to the Bike Ped and Transit Committee by virtue of the fact that she was the only nominee. Congratulations, Carrie.
Thank you.
Nice campaign.
Right. You'll
All
have to
right,
ride your bike to the
and
next meeting.
we
Yeah.
now have a representative for the Stormwater Utility Board. Don Canor is doing that currently, and I believe he's interested in continuing to do it. And with that in mind, I would nominate Don Canor for another term on the Stormwater Utility Board. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Third and final call. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll declare nominations are closed, and by virtue of the fact that he is once again the only nominee, Nan Kadar in absentia has waged another successful campaign and is declared elected to the Stormwater Utility Board.
I'll let them know.
Okay. All right, next item is Parmener Street reconstruction. Sean, do you want to kind of walk us through this one a little bit, please?
Yeah, at the time we hired MSA to do the design work on Parmener Street, north of Century Avenue, and it's a little bit north of Century Avenue, up to about Greenbrier Road, or just short of there. We knew that without a preliminary design, we'd be shooting in the dark as to how much we would need for scope of services for real estate acquisition, for utility easements and releases thereof, and temporary limited easements. But now that we have at least a first cut of a preliminary design, MSA put together this scope of services with a fee to begin in on real estate, with the intention that by early next year, or maybe late this year, we could start bidding the project for construction next year. So this was expected. There was always known to be sort of this fixed figure that was in their original proposal, and the balance of that was what was variable, kind of per parcel, per extents of what we have to go after for real estate.
Sean, I had a question about the, the items that are listed in the attachment.
Sure.
When we get down to the pricing of those.
Oh, you just went by it.
Okay, yeah, I've gone too far.
Yeah, it's back, it's still back a little bit, I think.
Ah, here we are.
Those items, I mean, I'm not familiar with what normal pricing for those kinds of services would be. Are these, as far as you are concerned, within the ballpark that they should be within?
I don't have a lot of experience with this either, although I am going through this exact same thing with the Pleasant View Road project, and it's in this same sort of ballpark.
So the contractor just sets these prices and sends them to us, or is that how that works?
The consultant, yep.
Consultant, okay.
Yep. And MSA has its own real estate kind of branch, if you will. So they have their own specialists. These aren't sub-consultants with some markup.
Okay. So you're comfortable with the pricing they've quoted?
I am. There's a fair amount of work, it turns out, even on my end with this kind of work. So if it goes easy with negotiations, that'd be great. But it can get really complicated too.
Okay. Committee, any questions, comments?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we recommend to the Finance Committee and Common Council this amendment to the agreement with MSA Professional Services.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second to Carrie's motion?
This is Carl, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a really quick question. This is the first one of these that I've seen. So this is all the work up to the negotiations for the easement pricing, right? This is kind of what sets the groundwork so we know how much the easements are going to be when they need to be.
This is included through actual acquisition of those, but not the price that we end up agreeing to. That's outside of, but this is all the consultant work too.
Right. So it's leading up to that point. To give us the numbers of what those easements are going to be. Is that right?
And to close on that, so to get
okay,
the
on
actual
the
deeds and
right.
Get the actual easement signed and recorded, that kind of thing.
So it's basically like all the business around it besides the value of the property.
Exactly. Yep. The
Okay.
check that we cut to the property owner is different, but this is intended
Right,
to
it's
be
like-
everything except that.
It's like the
Now,
real estate broker kind of thing.
yeah, right.
Okay.
The one downside is, while we do know from this preliminary design, a pretty good extent of what we're after, I can't guarantee that this won't change, that we end up affecting one more parcel or one fewer parcels. That could still happen, but
Okay.
we needed to get rolling on this.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from committee members? All right, then hearing none, on Carrie's motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that's what we will recommend to the Finance Committee and the council.
So next up, we've got the resolution for the sewer utilities annual report. And I could just jump down to that actually. See, Dave Sarbacher's with us now, and he prepared both the report and the resolution for the packets. It's pretty much the same as last year on the report, which is all good news. No dings on ourselves. Solid financial position. So it's mostly, going through and checking boxes and coming up with a final answer on the report. But if there are any questions on that or the resolution, Dave's here.
It all looked good to me. Dave, do you have any comments on anything?
No, actually, everything went really well again for another year.
All right, committee, questions, comments?
Ramsey will move to recommend approval to the common council.
All right, we have a motion to recommend approval of the council. Is there a second to Dan's motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion.
That's
and a second.
Focus.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we will recommend the adoption of the report to the council. All right, thank you, David.
Thank you.
So sort of the last thing we've got going on, and it'll be of interest to Dave too, because it gets into the water towers. We've got we used to have, I think, all 6 lease spaces on our 2 elevated water tanks leased out to cell carriers. We only have 3 left, 3 of them voluntarily left. And I think just because 2 of them were negotiated at slightly different times than the third one, they're at wildly different rents, but the rest of the terms of the leases are very similar. Just the price is different, and by quite a lot. So AT&T's been on my case for a little more than a decade to lower their rent, or they're leaving, and this time they really mean it. The other 2 have not been on my case about raising their rent because it's just grossly underrepresentative of the value. And yet we're selling the same space to 3 different companies at really, really different prices. Recently, the leases for Verizon and AT&T, T-Mobile, are coming up at the end of their period. In fact, Verizon's just passed. T-Mobile will be soon. AT&T has a few years left on theirs, but I reached out to Verizon because they were really interested in re-upping, and we've been going back and forth for quite a long time. And I said, you really got to get up into the $30,000 range. And we've been talking about that for 5 years now. And they finally came back to me and said, no, but we could meet you halfway. And by the way, we want to go from 9 antenna to like 12 antenna. And so, you know, they're willing to pay a little bit more, but nothing in line with what AT&T has been paying us, and they want more space. I didn't feel like at the staff level I could go much further with these discussions without, you know, getting some guidance from the committee and or possibly the finance committee to get back to Verizon and frankly to reach out to T-Mobile because they haven't touched base with me at all lately. Just to let them know that, you know, the city is fine with continuing this relationship, although in a couple of the past projects of upgrades, they have played pretty fast and loose with security on our water towers. And I was very unhappy with AT&T the last upgrade they did. But this is not a huge revenue stream for the water utility. So whether they stay or go is of minor importance compared to how they deal with security of our facilities. Anyway, that's just kind of background. Where I'm at is I think the city needs to take a position, or at least the board of directors of the utility needs to take a position with negotiations and in particular with Verizon.
Do you have any experience with or knowledge about what other people are getting paid for this same thing?
It's really difficult to say, although a couple of years ago when I was researching this issue, touched base with the school district because at least they had some leases at the high school football field on that tower there. And we had a lease space in Lakeview Park with Verizon, but I think that was just a ground lease. I think it's their tower with their antennas on it. And I think at the time the high school was in the ballpark of $30,000, but carriers in particular won't tell you. And even professionals who deal with this kind of thing seem to say, you know, it depends where it is and what it's serving and you know, how far their coverage goes with a particular site. So they're pretty cagey on stuff too. I haven't found out much that's useful other than I can tell you Verizon and AT&T are sitting on the same real estate.
We don't know, other municipalities must do the same thing, don't they?
I really
Some kinds of structures that they have. I just wondered what Madison or Sun Prairie or any other municipalities receive as revenue for these things.
Right, and that's where at least the folks I've talked with seem to get into the weeds a bit of saying, you know, well, it still depends what their coverage is from that spot or what their connectivity is from that spot. And so I don't know, it's difficult for me to say what its value is.
When you look at the variables and the three that we have and how different, you know, the one is to the other two, I can imagine across the board, they're kind of like that at all. Was that a market rate at some point or, you know, they're probably, I mean, if ours are any indication, they're probably all over the board.
Yeah, I don't know how we picked the numbers we did and they're only 4 years apart, you know.
Sean, in terms of security, is there like certain, I don't know, standards that they have to meet? And if they're not going to meet them, can we kind of just ask them to leave at that point? Like if they're not, I don't know, like I'm just wondering.
I did write that letter to AT&T. Yeah, that if this was going to happen again, we were just done with them. There just is, I mean, this kind of money gets chewed up in a heartbeat if somebody got into our water system.
Mm-hmm.
Did they respond to that letter?
They did, well, by direct action, not in writing,
Yeah.
but they did at least address the problem. But it's silly that it came to that in the first place. I mean, nobody leaves a water tower unlocked.
Well, I'm not sure how you would like us to proceed here, Sean. I mean, I don't know that it makes sense for us to try to set prices for you to negotiate. That's going to be a very fluid situation. And I don't know, what you do. You said you had a preference for getting an annual payment rather than monthly payments from these places too. Are they prepared to do that, capable of doing that?
I think they would do that. In fact, I think they would be happy enough to do that. I know that they would be happy to get off the consumer price index, because that's just nonsense. They would like as much certainty as possible themselves. And to some degree, whether they offer 10% per term or 12%, they don't seem unduly concerned with exactly what that number is. It's just that in Verizon's case, they were unwilling to go to $30,000. And I thought, at bare minimum, it's just difficult for me to accept that AT&T is paying 42 and Verizon's paying 17.
AT&T has kind of set the market at what it is, and I don't know that we can give it to Verizon. And if it's as an income stream, it doesn't mean that much. I don't know that we can give it to Verizon at 24.5, and they want to go from 9 to 12. That's we can't do that.
I agree. I feel like, especially since it's on the same water tower, it needs to be the same price roughly. If unless there's a significant difference in the number of antennae, right? Like then that would make sense, but.
Yeah, so, and this is kind of the paragraph of sort of where we landed. And this is after spending some time with them on that.
Sean, what are our U's?
Oh, it's a remote radio unit. It's
Okay.
just some ancillary equipment that works with the antennas. And it's sort of a shoebox kind of thing that hangs on the catwalk railing. The only reason I mentioned the number of them is because as antenna have been getting bigger, the number of RRUs has also been getting bigger, and it's just more weight to add to the railings. So when the wind blows, it becomes sort of a structural concern that we've hung more weight up there than we really want.
Well,
so
my
I don't know that
opinion,
there's, oh, right. Oh, sorry, Dan.
my opinion is you gave them a fair offer, a salvo at 30,000. I don't see any reason to go below that. That's what you asked for, right? So if that's what you've asked for.
Yeah. And frankly, I wouldn't even care if the city then wanted to lower AT&T's rate some from 42 down to 37 or 35 or 30. Like I say, the revenue stream is not the make or break deal of the water utility. I wanted to restore some degree of fairness here.
Well, it certainly would make sense to have all three of the contracts be
Equal.
more equal than they are now. I don't know that there's an argument to be made to have one be worth more than the others. But I mean, I think there should be some more consistency in the rates. And it seems like the escalator clause ought to be the same in all three contracts for continuity's sake. And if you can get them all to pay annually, that would be fine. Now, you mentioned you might want to have the finance committee of the council take a look at this also and see what their input might be.
Yeah, I'd be really open to that. It's obviously a financial thing. It's really for the water utility, but that's part of the city too.
Yeah.
And seen as it's a finance thing, it should probably go to the finance committee. So I will make a motion that we refer it to the finance committee with the whatever input that we give.
Do we want to make
recommendations that we
some
give.
recommendations along with that? And like trying to get the annual rent to be much more consistent than what it is now, have the same escalator clause in all three of the contracts, have them run for the same duration, have an annual payment rather than monthly payments, so that we bring a little more consistency to this.
Yeah,
I would think we should make them all at 35 and 12 and a half.
Oh, that's fine.
So are we asking finance just for guidance on what they would like to see? Is that what you're wanting to hear from them?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
well,
what you were asking of us, Sean, right? Was guidance.
Exact-
And so that's what you want to be asking of finance if they have any guidance.
yeah, so I would love to pass along the guidance from this committee to finance, and if they have
Okay.
a different opinion, fine. I just want to at some point get back to Verizon definitively and say, this is no longer coming from staff. This is now coming from the city of Middleton.
Okay.
Take it or leave it.
Okay. Okay. That's the position that you want to be in with the companies, is that you're saying it's not just me, it's the city that's saying this is where we want to, got it. Okay.
Because
I
I
see what
think
you're
I've
looking
gone
for.
as far as I reasonably can, and I have not pulled the trigger on saying, if you're not going to meet our price, you're going to have to leave.
Okay.
Robert would like to make a comment.
I see a civilian with his hand up.
That would be me. I might recommend that to give finance some clue as to what's going on. Is there a chance that you can list out for each of these three companies, how many antennas, how many RRUs? Because what this might come down to is not a set number per company. If one company has, 12 times as much equipment up there as another, they should probably be paying more. So if you can give, I just having seen what finance does, they're going to want a little bit of information before they give any clear guidance. And if you can help break it down, maybe they can say, well, now we have some math that would support why we would charge AT&T this much and T-Mobile this much and Verizon this third amount.
Verizon is the one with the most antennas coming up, right? They're going to have 12.
Well,
And-
they want to have 12.
Right.
Mhm.
And on top of that, we would like to connect to their generator.
Right. Yep.
So, I mean, that's in terms of the amount of antennas and the connection to the generator, it's kind of a wash, I think. So I think we should recommend a number. I mean, I don't think we want to make necessarily go down A&T down to 30,000. I think I'd like to make a motion that we as a guidance number to the finance committee, we believe that 35,000 is fair for each one of them with a 12.5% escalator clause.
Well, Dan made a motion earlier.
That can be a friendly amendment, and I would agree to
Okay.
that.
All right, that's fine. And then the same, same escalator for all of them, and we're going to recommend also an annual payment rather than a monthly payment.
Yep.
Anything else we need to include with our guidance, Sean, or does that pretty well cover it?
I think that's a really good head start, and we'll know in a hurry whether Verizon's willing or not willing to do that. And frankly, similarly for T-Mobile, although they are on slightly different real estate, they're on High Road instead of Highland Way. I don't know if that affects their coverage or customer base, but they are slightly different position. I just have a hard time imagining that also is only half the value of being somewhere else.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion with respect to the motion as amended by Carl?
What was the number for the rate per year, the rent? Would you say 32 or 30?
35.
35. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'll second the motion. Or I guess I made it, so I can't.
You made
say.
it.
No, Dan did.
Well,
Dan
you
did
made a
it.
friendly amendment to Dan's
Yeah.
motion. So I guess technically we have Dan's motion as amended here to vote on. And I think there was a second to Dan's motion originally, wasn't there, Sean?
I did not catch that, no.
All right. Well, then we're a motion in search of a second.
Well, I think Carl just did though.
Carl just
Carl
did.
seconded. All right. All right, then we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and that will be our recommendation to the Finance Committee and ultimately perhaps to the council. Okay,
Well, that's it already.
other business. Well, Robert,
wanna
what did you
talk about-
think?
Do you want to talk about the next meeting or is that not possible?
Well, I can only mention, yeah, that's a good point, Carl. I can mention that I don't have anything currently on the agenda. I'm planning to be out of the office that week. So unless something significant comes up, I'm planning that to just cancel that next meeting.
That would be the second Monday in June.
Correct, yep.
Okay,
And I'll send out confirmation either way, whether
All right.
it's definitively canceled or not. But yeah,
Very
good
good.
heads up for planning.
I think we are ripe for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. This is Wilkus.
All right, we have a motion. Was there a second?
This is Scheffner, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Did this bring back fond memories, Robert?
It did. It was entertaining, but it only entertained me for half an hour.